The intro to Midway's NHL Hitz 2003 is potentially the most 2003 video ever made. To the sound of new metal band Powerman 5000's Bombshell, we see cover athlete Chris Pronger gearing up in a computer simulation like some kind of inhuman hockey-playing robot. Then the intro barrages us with smash cuts between clips of real-life hockey, bodies colliding into bodies, crashing into the boards, doing flips, their helmets flying off. All while these cartoony explosion effects play over every hit. Get up, the lead singer refrains. This is out of control. NHL Hitz 2003 is a high-octane hockey action game. It's a spin-off of Midway's renowned NFL Blitz, a game famous for its exaggerated hits, post-whistle tackles, and cheerleaders on the main menu. Blitz is evident in NHL Hitz's bloodline, as Hitz is faster and more brutal than any mainstream hockey game since. Hitz features real teams with real hockey pros, skating at a breakneck pace and laying each other flat with every hit. There are dodge moves in Hitz, but they only offer invincibility for a split second. Non-violent poke checking only knocks a puck away unpredictably. Meanwhile, hitting is fast and efficient, and it grants the player uncontested puck possession by stunning their opponent. True to its name, Hitz wants you to hit, and it wants you to hit a lot. In fact, NHL Hitz allows you to hit anyone without the puck, throwing a penalty for checking the goalie. No matter how hard you blindside a player, whether you crunch them into the boards or hurl them through shattered glass, they'll always get back up on their skates. In NHL Hitz, you'll never see a player clutching a broken leg on the ice or out cold after hitting their head. NHL Hitz is simply too fun for injuries. If you ever go overboard, the recipient of the hit will throw off their gloves and swing at you in retribution. It's eye for an eye, and all problems will be settled on the ice. Just get up and hit them back harder. But it's meaningless fun, just an exaggeration of violence that, on a small scale like hockey, must be isolated from the outside world. After all, didn't these athletes know what they were getting into? Since 2003, Boston University neuropathologist Dr. Anne McKee has been on a mission. That was the year that she discovered a way to identify CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, in the dissected brain of a boxer. CTE is a neurodegenerative disease linked with both concussive and subconcussive repetitive head trauma. The disease is marked by symptoms of cognitive impairment, memory loss, loss of executive function, and an increase in aggression, depression, emotional instability, and suicidality. As of now, it can only be biologically diagnosed post-mortem. By the 2010s, Dr. McKee established a brain bank dedicated to CTE research, and as a football fan, conducted a study about the prevalence of disease in football players. Of 111 donated NFL players' brains, 110 were diagnosed with CTE. In a 2018 article by Sports Illustrated, McKee expresses that although the lab did not have enough hockey players to conduct a similar study, donations have been increasing over the years. Their biggest barrier is the NHL itself, whose lawyers tried to subpoena as many medical records as they could, worried that McKee might reveal something about their sport too. The hits that cause CTE happen all the time in hockey, she says to the article's reporter. The reporter watches her dissect the deteriorated frontal lobe of a player. The biggest part of the brain, he comments. The part that controls decision-making and judgment and our higher-order self. The part that makes us human. Potentially the most notorious fighter in NHL history is Bob Probert. He modeled the prototypical enforcer, a strategic role defined by bullying the other team into submission, while acting as a bodyguard for the star players of one's own team. There's an honor ascribed to the enforcer, as they're often characterized as the truly hard-working, blue-collar players of hockey. On the critical hockey blog The Chaotic Neutral Zone, a writer under the pen name E explains, players who built their careers around hitting, or better yet fighting, were usually seen as strong, brave, tough, self-sacrificing, honest. Skill, on the other hand, was often treated as if it was not just overrated but perhaps immoral. Any kind of play that might be considered fancy was seen as ethically suspect, selfish or show-offy, lazy, indulgent. In this form of hockey, the fists of the opposing team's enforcer are the punishment one faces for being talented. Despite being 37, older than the majority of the league, Probert has one of the highest toughness stats in NHL Hitz 2003. It speaks to his reputation as he fought 337 times over his 16-year career. He fought over twice as much as he scored goals, a fact reflected in hits, as none of his skill stats compare to his ability to terrorize opposing players. He was feared to such an extent that fellow enforcer Stu Grimson went on to describe the experience of fighting Probert as like waging war with an inanimate being. On some occasions in real life, Probert even came back to fight in the same game he was knocked unconscious. He, like numerous other enforcers, died before his 50th birthday. All of them have been diagnosed with CTE. Probert's legacy is carried on by articles, documentaries, and memories of his friends and family. As we play NHL Hitz 2003, we see a deliberately incomplete picture. We see Probert as he existed within the context and norms of his sport. Within the rules and limitations of the code written by the developers, there's no room for anything else. Probert's likeness is here, as well as a rough estimation of his abilities, but the game ignores a human behind that model. It ignores the detriment this game, the one that promoted the honor of violence, had in his life. As a player, we're encouraged to harm him further. In August of this year, GameRant.com published an article discussing a recently announced arcade cabinet for the original NFL Blitz. This article discusses a stipulation by the NFL that any re-release of the game must remove late hits and over-the-top violence. The author then argues against this, explaining that the cartoony violence is exactly what made NFL Blitz unique. He says that retroactively altering a 20-year-old game would do little to combat the persisting real-life issue of concussions, and comes across more as a superficial PR move than an actual positive change. Although I agree with this train of thought, the conclusion makes me pause. Plenty of titles like Mortal Kombat, Resident Evil, God of War, and the like have completely eclipsed even the most brutal hits found in NFL Blitz. The reality is that players are easily able to distinguish between the cartoonish violence of NFL Blitz and acceptable real-life behavior. This is equally true of the game's hockey counterpart. Surely nobody would mix this up with real life. The physics are wonky. Activating a super meter lights your team on fire. You can play in a shark tank, a moon base, the circus, and even the USA. Apart from the real-life players and official team licenses, there isn't anything that represents real-world attitudes or politics. Right? NHL Hitz shows us what it thinks the most desirable form of hockey is. Through its lax rules, breakneck mechanics, and defensively focused strategies, NHL Hitz tells us that hockey should be a war. Every point of contact sends another player soaring. Helmets fly off one after the other as their owners jump right back up to play. Players drop their gloves and fight every game, but they'll never get concussed, or have their life cut short in a video game. People like Bob Probert don't have lives or personalities outside of the narrow set of animations or polygonal 3D models can act out. NHL Hitz 2003 might feature real people, but it's not a game about real people. To say a game as silly as NHL Hitz 2003 has nothing to tell us is to deprive video games of their status as an artistic medium. Art mirrors the intentions of the creator and the underlying beliefs of the culture that produced it. The developers here were certainly not trying to make a statement, at least not consciously, but with a sport like football on a 15-year decline of youth enrollment due to CTE studies, and hockey, which looks to follow in its wake, their effort shows us so much about how we got here. In their game world, we see reflections of modern cultural issues. The strange, sometimes dehumanizing way we portray athletes and other celebrities, the construction of aggression and retaliation as honorable, and the neglect of the lifelong effects of serious head injury. And ultimately, NHL Hitz already chooses to defend itself. It's right there on the back of the box. What's hockey without hits?
I think the biggest challenge of doing any video game is just getting it done in the proper time frame and putting the excitement of the real sport into the game.
But you know, there's a big bodies out there, 200 pounds, and you know, all you have to do is hit them. And when you hit them, you don't have to maim them, but hit them to hurt. I mean, nobody's afraid out there. That game tonight, Winnipeg, are you kidding me? They look like nothing either. Nobody hits anybody. Look like a tea party out there. Look, Swedes and Finns playing at December. Nothing, no hitting. Then you go down and you watch Pittsburgh and Canadians, wango. That's hockey. There's no hitting. If a guy can't score, then they bring up guys that are supposed to be tough, and they bring guys tough and they lay on the ice and they don't fight. They don't do anything. I mean, hit or fight or do something.